I'm standing here in a Thicket-Wide plot, one of the experiments that was set up as part of the Thicket-Wide Plot Experiment, which was over 300 plots across the eastern and western Cape of South Africa. This is in the Baviaanskloof, and I'm just going to make a few notes and observations. Firstly, some plants are looking really impressive. That's the 2 meter mark over there. So this plant is doing very well, but it's on a lot of the original soil. I think this little area hasn't gone through a lot of erosion, whereas the topsoil has eroded over in this section over here. You can see the erosion down here, and on these eroded soils the plants are looking a lot less happy, really small. So these plants are looking really small and very unhappy. These were planted the same time. All of these cuttings, all of these plants here were planted as unrooted cuttings in 2009. So they're the same age, and there hasn't been any what we call blanking, which is coming back and filling any plants that have died. So these plants are definitely the same age as what we saw further up there, and yet they're incredibly small. I mean, this is a very, very unhappy spekboom plant. This could be, I suspect that this is driven by a shift in soils, because if we just go a little bit further up there, you can see a much larger plant, and you can see the erosion section over there. So we've shifted onto a different substrate. Originally I thought that this might be due to soil depth, but when they set up these plots they also dug pits, soil pits. So I just thought that maybe these were really shallow soils, but if we go look at the soil pit, then we can see that these are fairly deep. So yeah, the soil's at least 20-30 centimeters deep. And given that spekboom does most of its root foraging in the top 20 centimeters, these soils should be more than adequate for spekboom growth. But right next door, we can see this really small plant. So we can rule out herbivory because I'm finding a lot of dead branch drop. So what happens when spekboom gets really stressed during droughts is that the branches will die back. Here we go. Here's an example of this branch dieback. So this plant was incredibly stressed. It just sealed off the base and lost that branch. Even though there's still a little bit of moisture, a little bit of leaves in there, it's trying to consolidate its moisture and continue to survive. And there's some more over there. There's more evidence of it over there. So this makes me think that this has to be a substrate problem, and we are on the Cape supergroup, the Table Mountain sandstones above. We're probably maybe another member of the Cape supergroup over here, but what I suspect is that these soils are really sandy and that they don't hang on to moisture. Like water flows out or evaporates out very quickly in this section, and I suspect that maybe there's a little bit more clay up there, less sandy. I'm just speculating here. There's something weird going on to try and address why we've got a really small stunted plants. So this would have been a treatment running up in the Thicket-Wide plot. Had 12 different treatment in the plots. So we can see that there are, really struggling in plants. When you see a plant like this, that you can see the stems, you know that it's under severe stress, usually water stress, because the whole plant should be covered in greenery. We shouldn't be able to see the stems. So when we follow this treatment up, they kind of cross over some geological line, some soil line, and suddenly the plants are big again. So that's now sitting at 1.5 meters, and even the plants on the side here are still looking much bigger than the ones further down. There is another thing at play here, which is planting density. See this huge plant there? Not a lot of plants around it, and that means it's got more foraging area. And this plant down here has got a lot of plants around it, and another one, this bigger plant over here. And we suspect that what is happening is that there is intraspecific, so between competition between the same species, so between these individuals. So intraspecific competition that's going on, that's also adding to the stunting. And I think the stunting is exacerbated when you hit a dry substrate, and effectively drier than normal substrate. And as we go down this substrate slope, the plants get smaller and smaller. There's a couple of plants just suddenly get big. Like, why all of a sudden is this one big? Like, why are you big and the rest of you are small? I suspect it's got something to do with maybe this one's made its skirt, so it's doing a bit of extra moisture trapping there, maybe, and these ones are remaining small. But in general, as one moves down the slope, the plants get smaller and smaller. Here's a classic example of an incredibly drought-stressed plant hanging in there. No signs of herbivory. All of these tips are well sealed. That's sealing from loss from a stem. So there, that was a drought loss. That's dieback of the stems. There's another bit of dieback there. What's interesting is that not many trees here, and the moment there are two trees, two papias there, the spekboom gets much bigger. And that suggests to me that there's something going on under the ground over there that's allowing those trees to either have established and grow there or to have survived there. That means that there's extra available moisture in that region over there that's allowed those plants to get bigger. Move away from the trees, plants get smaller and smaller. And we can see there are no trees over there and really tiny plants. So I'm just kind of using that as a ad hoc explanation as to why these plants are so much bigger. I reckon there's something happening locally here. And in fact, if we just go and have a look there, it looks like the soil suddenly becomes a little thicker here because you see fewer rocks. Look how many rocks there are down here. And as we walk through here, definitely fewer rocks. Oh, it even feels different. The soil even feels different. There, we're back onto this kind of, feels a little clayey. A little bit more clay. And then, yes, I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually, we're actually on a bit of a hummock here. It's a little hill, and then when we drop off it, you can see when the rocks start again. And when the rocks start, we've lost a little bit of soil, but not necessarily soil depth. Remember that soil pit I just showed you a moment ago, but the plants are struggling here. These plants aren't planted as densely as up the top there, and even though they're struggling, they seem to be bigger. And I think that that's because there's less intraspecific competition going on here. Oh, there's a bush clump over there. We seem to have larger plants over there as well. So I'm wondering if that's another hummock. That could be a termite mound over there. In fact, as I say, that could be a termite mound. I see a small emergent termite mound over there, but they can make fairly large mounds as well. So I'm wondering that could explain what's happening there. But what this means for an industry that needs is going to be developing carbon credits is that this is called slow thicket on this substrate. Yes, this will grow, this will become a large plant, but it's going to take a lot longer, maybe 2 or 3 times the length of time it takes to get those to that size, and that's based on the soil. Thankfully, most of our degraded areas aren't so much on these sandy soils, they're on clay-rich soils, so I think that makes a big difference. The water, there's more water available, or the water doesn't evaporate as easily off the clays, and anyway, that's my basic understanding of that, but sure to be corrected on that. Yeah, these plants are just really small in comparison to what's going on up there, and we need to understand the dynamics of what's happening with the soils and spekboom growth. This is a fantastic site because I'm not seeing any herbivory damage here. Usually herbivory damage is very evident. The other thing I'm not seeing is frost damage. If there had been any frost in the previous winter, I'm now in November, I'd still be seeing evidence of frost, because there would be dead tips which stick around for a while, and I haven't seen any of that, so I can rule out frost. And the only other thing I can think of is that it is some geological component. And then when we get to a point over there beyond the car, the plants get big again, which tells me that it's not position on the slope. So those plants over there were planted after these ones, and you can see the small plants, so all of those plants there and those plants there were planted together. So it just goes to show you that soil type can have an impact on spekboom growth, and it's something that we need to take into consideration. It's really difficult because you need plots like this that are 10-15 years old that haven't had much else happen to them, as in you haven't had herbivory or frost events or goats breaking in and wrecking the plot. That's happened to a few of these plots. And so what we need is to have a lot of plots like this to be able to work out what the long-term impacts of soil may potentially be on the growth rates, and tricky to study, very tricky. Check this, get onto the other side of the fence, and looking pretty dismal still. Different planting, and then they suddenly get big again. Let's go and have a look at what's happening on that line there. It definitely looks like there's some kind of line, and then suddenly the plants get big. Let's go have a look there. So I've come up to what kind of seems like that line. So really small plants on this side, much bigger plants on that side, and these plants are way bigger. So I mean, that's 1.8 meters tall, but probably 2 meters wide. One of the things that I notice immediately is that we've got trees here suggesting that there's small trees there, and we've got this. So if you follow this line, we've got trees growing on this side, and the spekboom's much bigger, and we've got very few trees in the open there, and we've got small plants, and then where we have the trees start again, the plants get bigger. So I'm quite convinced that these small plants there's something geologically, there's something going on underneath the soil that's impacting them. Leave with some money shots. There's some intact spekboom up on those slopes. This is all restored spekboom. Fantastic to see. And if we zoom even further into those far slopes, you can see more restored spekboom on those slopes there and on those far slopes over there. So fantastic to see high survival rates, and in areas really great growth. And let's hope that these areas that have something up with their soils are a small minority of the degraded area in the subtropical thicket. Alrighty, thanks for listening.